The morning in the small Oregon suburb began quietly, the kind of calm that made the air feel soft and steady. Ethan Reed stepped into the garage with a sleepy sigh, ready to fix the loose light bulb that had been flickering for days. He wasn't usually the one who repaired things around the house, but with his dad traveling again, he had taken on more chores than usual. The garage smelled like dust and old bike tires, the smell of things no one had touched in months. Ethan pulled the old wooden stool into the center and climbed up slowly, trying to balance. "Mom, hurry up, I can't stand on it anymore," he called, his voice echoing against the cement walls. He expected Olivia, his stepmom, to be right behind him. She usually moved quickly, always organized, always ready to help. But today her steps were slow, her silence heavier than usual. Ethan held the bulb between his fingers and waited, the stool wobbling just enough to make him nervous. When he glanced over his shoulder, he saw Olivia standing at the doorway, half in the shadows, half in the soft morning light. She wasn't holding the toolbox. She wasn't even walking toward him. She just stood still, staring at something in her hand, her phone. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, not blinking, not moving, as if whatever she had just seen had frozen her in place. "Mom," Ethan said again, more confused now than impatient. Olivia didn't react for another long second. Then she blinked quickly and slid the phone into her pocket. She tried to smile, that gentle smile she always used around him, but the edges didn't reach her eyes. "Sorry," she said softly. "I got distracted. I'm here." But Ethan had already seen the name that flashed across her screen. He didn't recognize it. It wasn't Daniel. His father's name was nowhere on that message preview. Ethan didn't say anything, but something shifted inside him. A quiet worry, thin at first, then sharper as he studied her face. Ethan climbed down from the stool, letting his feet touch the cold concrete for stability. He handed Olivia the broken bulb, and she took it with a quick, distracted movement. Her hand trembled slightly. It wasn't obvious, but Ethan noticed. He always noticed small things. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said quickly, too quickly. "Just work stuff. Nothing serious." But her voice didn't match her words. It cracked in the middle like a glass under pressure. She walked past him to grab the new bulb from the shelf, but even her steps sounded different, too light, too careful, like she was trying not to make noise she couldn't explain. For the rest of the day, Ethan kept replaying the moment in the garage. The frozen look, the trembling hand, the unfamiliar name on her phone. There was no reason for him to be suspicious. Olivia had always been kind to him, always supportive, always calm. She wasn't perfect, but she was steady. And steady people didn't look like they were about to fall apart. The house felt heavier after that. At breakfast the next morning, Olivia moved around the kitchen like she was carrying invisible weights. She burned the toast, something she never did. She poured orange juice into a mug instead of a glass. She kept checking her phone when she thought Ethan wasn't watching. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked again. She nodded without meeting his eye. "Just tired." But Ethan had seen tired people. His dad came home tired. His teachers arrived tired. Olivia didn't look tired, she looked worried. She looked like someone hiding something. A few days later, Ethan came home from school earlier than usual. The sky outside was cloudy, and the air smelled like rain. As he walked up the driveway, he heard voices from inside. Olivia's voice, low and strained. He froze near the window, not proud of it but unable to move away. "No, I can't talk now," she whispered sharply. "Not while he's home. Please, Mark, just give me time." Ethan's breathing stopped for a moment. Mark. The same name he'd seen on the phone. The name wasn't familiar. Not family. Not a friend Daniel had ever mentioned. And Olivia sounded stressed, almost scared, but not scared of danger. Scared of being found out. He stepped back from the window quickly, his heart pounding as he pretended he had just arrived. Olivia opened the front door a moment later, her face pale, her eyes shiny like she had been crying. "You're home early," she said. "Yeah. Half day," he replied. She forced a smile, but it didn't stay long. For the next week, the distance between them grew like a space neither knew how to close. Olivia avoided long conversations. She stayed in her room more. She took walks alone. She kept her phone close, guarding it as if it held something fragile. Ethan didn't want to think the worst. He didn't want to imagine anything that could hurt his dad. Daniel loved Olivia. He talked about her all the time, even from Toronto, where meetings kept him away for weeks. He trusted her. And Ethan knew his father didn't have much left to give if something cracked again. But the truth had a way of creeping into places where lies tried to hide. One evening near sunset, Ethan walked outside to throw the trash. The air was cool, and the sky looked like it had been brushed with soft gold. As he dropped the bag into the bin, he noticed movement across the street. A dark car parked near the corner, engine off, windows half-tinted. A man sat inside. Not someone from the neighborhood. Not someone Ethan recognized. But when Olivia stepped out of the house a few minutes later, dressed nicer than usual, her hair brushed with more care, the man in the car sat up straighter. Olivia didn't see Ethan standing near the mailbox. She walked toward the car slowly, hesitantly. The man opened the door and stepped out. He was tall, clean-cut, dressed like someone who worked in an office. When Olivia reached him, her shoulders loosened in a way that made Ethan's stomach twist. She wasn't scared. She wasn't meeting a stranger. She was meeting someone she already knew. "Mark," Olivia whispered. Ethan's chest tightened. He didn't hear every word, only pieces. "I shouldn't be here. We need to talk. I'm afraid he'll find out." Ethan stepped back quietly before they saw him. He walked into the house with shaking hands, the truth hitting him faster than he could process. He didn't want to jump to conclusions. He didn't know the full story. But something was happening. Something big. Something that involved secrets, fear, and late-night messages. For hours he paced his room, thinking of what to do, what to say. Should he tell his dad? Should he confront Olivia? Should he pretend he didn't see anything and hope it went away? But deep down, he knew the truth never disappeared on its own. It always pushed its way into the open, especially when it had the power to break a family. That night as he lay awake, listening to the quiet hum of the house, Ethan realized something unsettling. He wasn't just worried for his dad. He was worried for Olivia too. She looked lost, scared, torn between choices she didn't know how to handle. Ethan sits on his bed, staring at the dark ceiling, understanding that the night he followed her had changed everything. The man in the car, the name on the phone, the silence. All of it pointed to something deeper than he expected. Something he wasn't prepared to uncover but now couldn't escape. Olivia never planned for her life to fall apart this way. When she married Daniel Reed 3 years earlier, she thought she had finally reached a safe place. She had survived a hard divorce, rebuilt her confidence, moved into a calm Oregon suburb, and found a family that needed her as much as she needed them. Daniel was gentle and steady, Ethan was quiet but kind, and the house felt warm, peaceful, dependable. For a while everything made sense. But over the last year, Daniel's business trips had grown longer. First 3 days, then a week, then 10 days, then 2 weeks. Every time he came home, he promised it was temporary. Every time he left again, Olivia felt a little more alone. She tried to fill her time with work, with community events, with quiet afternoons reading on the porch, but the house no longer felt full. Nights were the hardest. Silence echoed through the hallways, and she often sat on the sofa staring at the door, hoping to hear Daniel's keys even when she knew he was hundreds of miles away. That loneliness became a door. And Mark was the person who walked through it. Olivia had met him at her community outreach job in Portland. Mark was the kind of person who always asked how others were doing and actually cared about the answer. He stayed late to finish projects, volunteered for work no one else wanted, and listened when Olivia talked about her stresses. First they were just coworkers, then friends, then something more complicated. Olivia didn't notice the shift immediately. It happened slowly, late-night conversations, shared rides after long events, quiet confessions about fears she had kept buried for years. One night after an exhausting fundraiser meeting she told him, "Sometimes I feel invisible in my own home." Mark didn't reply with empty comfort. He simply looked at her with concern that felt warm and terrifying at the same time. That moment became a thread pulling her closer to him each day. She didn't hate her husband. She didn't want to betray him. But she felt like she was falling through a crack in her life, and Mark seemed to be the only one reaching out a hand. But that hand came with consequences she hadn't prepared for. After Ethan saw her talking with Mark outside the house, Olivia felt the walls of her life shift. Like everything she was hiding had begun pushing itself into the open. She knew Ethan wasn't naive. He noticed things. She had seen worry in his eyes for weeks but pretended not to. She kept telling herself she could fix it before anyone got hurt. But now she wasn't sure. She tried to keep her distance from Mark after that evening, but it was harder than she expected. He kept calling, sending messages, asking if she was okay. She would stare at his name on the screen, her heart twisting with guilt and longing at the same time. One afternoon at work, Mark approached her with a soft sigh. "You've been avoiding me." "I have to," Olivia answered, her voice weak. "My stepson saw us talking. He already thinks something is wrong." Mark leaned against the desk. "Olivia, you can't keep living like this. You're hurting." She looked away. "I made this mess. I should be the one to clean it up. What do you want me to do?" Mark asked gently. "Give me space," she whispered. But space wasn't the real solution. The real problem was the truth she had avoided for months. She was unhappy, she felt alone, and she didn't know how to talk to her husband about it. She had tried in small ways, asking him to cut down on travel, asking him to spend more weekends at home, telling him she felt distant, but Daniel always insisted, "This is temporary. Things will calm down soon." Except soon never came. Back at home, Ethan noticed every change in her routine. She stayed quiet during dinner, cleaned late into the night, and flinched every time her phone vibrated. Ethan wasn't angry. He was confused and scared. He didn't want to jump to conclusions. He didn't want to believe Olivia would do anything to hurt the family. But the signs were impossible to ignore. One evening, Ethan found her sitting at the kitchen table long after midnight, staring at a cold cup of tea. She looked exhausted, her hair messy, her face pale. "Are you okay?" he asked, stepping closer. She looked up slowly, like she had been pulled from a distant thought. "Ethan, we need to talk." He sat across from her, heart pounding. "I know you saw something," she said quietly, "and I think it's time I explain." Ethan didn't speak. He didn't trust his voice. Olivia took a deep breath. "Your father and we've been struggling for a while. Not fighting, not angry. Just distant. He's gone most of the time, and when he's home he's tired. We don't talk the way we used to." She paused, trying not to cry. "I made mistakes," she said, her voice cracking. "I leaned on someone else for support. Not because I didn't care about your father. I care about him deeply. But I was lonely, and I didn't know how to handle it." Ethan looked down at his hands. Hearing the truth was heavier than he expected. He wasn't sure if he felt sadness, anger, or shock. Maybe all three. "I never wanted you to get caught in the middle," Olivia continued. "I never wanted you to see anything or worry about me. But I haven't been honest with myself or with your father." "Who is he?" Ethan asked finally. "A co-worker," she replied softly. "Someone I talked to when I felt overwhelmed. I should have set boundaries. I should have walked away. But I didn't, and now everything feels like it's falling apart." Ethan didn't know what to say. He wasn't an adult, but he suddenly felt the weight of adult problems pressing on his shoulders. Olivia reached across the table, her hand trembling. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she whispered. "I just need you to understand that I'm not trying to hurt you or your father. I'm just lost." For the first time, Ethan saw her not as his stepmother but as a person. Someone flawed, scared, trying her best but failing in ways she never imagined. His anger softened into a strange, painful sympathy. But before either of them could continue, the sound of a key turning in the front door made both of them freeze. It was slow, unfamiliar. Not the usual energetic sound Daniel made when returning from a long trip. Olivia stood up quickly. Ethan did too. The door opened and Daniel stepped in carrying a travel bag. His eyes were tired, but he smiled out of habit. "Surprise," he said. "I got an earlier flight. Thought I'd come home and—" He stopped when he saw their faces. "What's going on?" Daniel asked, his expression tightening as he glanced between them. The house felt smaller, the air heavier. The moment felt like something breaking open even before the words were spoken. "Daniel," Olivia whispered, her voice barely audible. "We need to talk." Ethan felt his stomach twist. He wasn't ready for this moment. He knew Olivia wasn't ready either. But the truth had arrived with Daniel's suitcase, and there was no way to avoid it anymore. Daniel looked at his son. Ethan, go upstairs. This is between. No, Olivia interrupted gently, placing a hand on Daniel's arm. He should stay. He already knows some of it. He deserves to hear the truth. Daniel's face turned pale as realization spread across his features. He set his bag down slowly, his hand shaking slightly. Tell me what's going on. Olivia swallowed hard, wiped her eyes, and prepared to speak the words she had feared for months. Words that would change their family forever. Daniel stood in the doorway, the cool air from outside brushing into the living room as he stared at Olivia and Ethan. His tired smile vanished the moment he saw their faces. Olivia's eyes were red, her hands shaking. Ethan looked pale, torn between fear and confusion. The house felt silent in a way Daniel had never felt before. A silence thick enough to hint at things he didn't want to imagine. He slowly stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Tell me what's going on, he said, his voice calm but heavy, as if he already sensed the truth waiting to hit him. Olivia opened her mouth but no words came out. She pressed a hand to her chest and took a shaky breath. Ethan didn't move. He stood still beside the table, unsure if he should stay or run, unsure if hearing the truth would help or break him further. Daniel looked at his son. Ethan, if this is something between your stepmom and me, you don't have to. No, Olivia said suddenly. He should stay. He already knows more than you think. Daniel's eyebrows lowered. He turned back toward her, his voice quiet but sharp. Knows what? Olivia's legs felt weak, so she sat down slowly. Her hands clasped together, knuckles white. Daniel, she whispered. I haven't been honest with you. The room tightened around them, like the walls themselves were listening. Daniel sat down across from her, his face unreadable. What do you mean? Olivia didn't want to hurt him. She didn't want to see the look she knew would come. But she couldn't hide anymore. Not when everything inside her felt tangled and broken. I've been lonely, she said softly. For a long time. Daniel's jaw clenched slightly. Lonely? I've been away for work, yes, but we talked about that. We agreed it was temporary. I know, Olivia whispered. But temporary kept stretching. Weeks turned into months. I kept trying to be patient, but I felt like I was disappearing in the process. She looked down, tears gathering in her eyes. Ethan watched, heart pounding, unsure if he wanted to hear the next part. Daniel leaned forward. Olivia, if you needed more support, you should have told me. I did, she said quietly. I tried. Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but she raised a hand gently. Please, let me finish. He closed his mouth, nodded slightly, and waited. There's someone at work, she said, her voice trembling. Someone I talked to when things got overwhelming. Someone who listened when I didn't feel heard. Someone who gave me comfort I didn't expect. Daniel's expression didn't change, but something inside him did. His breathing shifted, shallow, sharp. Ethan's stomach dropped. Hearing the truth out loud felt heavier than guessing it. Olivia continued, her voice breaking. I didn't plan it. I didn't want it. But I leaned on him too much. I crossed emotional lines I never should have crossed. I've been trying to step back, trying to end it, but it's been hard. Daniel sat back in his chair, staring at her like the ground had disappeared beneath him. His name is Mark, she added softly. Daniel's face finally cracked. Not with anger, at least not at first, but with a deep hurt that made him look older, tired, wounded in a place no one could see. So that's why you've been distant, he said quietly. That's why you've seemed somewhere else. Olivia wiped tears from her cheeks. I'm sorry, Daniel. I am so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I never meant to betray your trust. He breathed deeply, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Is it? He swallowed. Is it more than emotional? No, Olivia said quickly, shaking her head. No. I stopped it before it went there. I swear. But the feelings, the confusion, they were still wrong. And I didn't tell you. That's my mistake. The room felt colder. Ethan watched his father, expecting anger to explode. But Daniel just sat there, quiet, stunned. He wasn't a man who shouted. He wasn't a man who broke things. He was the kind who broke inside, silently, where no one could help him. Finally, he spoke again. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I was scared, Olivia whispered. Scared of hurting you. Scared of losing everything. Scared of facing what I'd done. Daniel looked down at his hands. And what do you want now? Olivia hesitated. Her voice was small when she answered. I want to fix our marriage. If that's something you want too. Daniel didn't respond immediately. His eyes drifted to Ethan, who stood frozen near the counter, trying to be invisible. Ethan, Daniel said gently. I'm sorry you had to see all this. Ethan shook his head. I just want you both to be okay. Daniel's voice softened. I know. Olivia wiped her face again, trying to steady her breath. I'll do whatever it takes to rebuild what I damaged. Therapy, honesty, boundaries, anything. Daniel nodded. Slowly, but the pain in his eyes didn't fade. I need time. Olivia expected that. She nodded as well. Take all the time you need. The three of them sat in silence for a long moment. The air was heavy, but for the first time in months, everything was honest. No more secrets. No more hiding. Over the next few weeks, their lives shifted into unfamiliar territory. Daniel moved into the guest room at first, not out of cruelty, but because he needed space to breathe, to understand, to heal. Olivia respected that. She didn't push him for answers. She didn't rush him. She focused on fixing the parts of herself she had ignored for too long. They began attending family therapy. At first the sessions were awkward, full of hesitant words and long pauses. But slowly, little by little, they began opening up. Daniel talked about feeling pressured to provide for the family, worried that slowing down would put everything at risk. Olivia talked about feeling invisible, unsupported, afraid of speaking her needs. Ethan spoke too, reluctantly at first, then with more honesty, about how the silence between them had scared him more than the truth. Healing wasn't quick. Some days were worse than before, filled with tension and hurt that bubbled back to the surface. But there were good days too. Moments of connection, forgiveness, and hope. Olivia ended all communication with Mark. She blocked his number, changed her work routines, and made clear boundaries. It wasn't easy, but she knew it was necessary if she wanted to move forward. Daniel cut down his travel. He started working from home more, spending evenings with his family instead of hotel rooms. He wasn't perfect, and neither was Olivia, but they were both trying, both pulling in the same direction again. Ethan watched all of it quietly, learning things about adults he never saw before. He learned that love wasn't simple, that people made mistakes, that forgiveness was a long road, not a quick decision, that families could break and still choose to rebuild. One night near the end of the summer, the three of them sat on the porch together, sipping tea and watching the sky fade from orange to blue. Daniel rested his hand gently over Olivia's, not fully healed but soft, open, willing. Ethan looked at them and felt something he hadn't felt in months, hope. He remembered the morning in the garage, standing on the old shaky stool calling out, "Hurry up, Mom, I can't stand on it anymore." Back then he had no idea how much weight those words would carry. He didn't know the stool was only the beginning, that everything beneath their quiet home was shifting, breaking, reshaping into something new. Now, months later, he understood. Sometimes families fell apart. Sometimes they held on. And sometimes, if they were honest and brave enough, they grew back stronger than before.